All right, this is part 4 of the quest system that we're building here for the AARPG tutorial series. And today we're going to build this QuestActivatedSwitch node, which allows us to show and hide things depending on the status of a quest. It's going to look a little bit something like this. Okay, you can see buttons appearing and the pot disappearing. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own ARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. Now that we've built our quest progression nodes that had quest advance trigger, today we're going to build the quest dependent nodes, or allow quest dependent nodes to happen. And we're going to do that by building what I'm calling the quest activated switch. And so this node, in similar fashion to our quest advance trigger that we did in the previous video, this node's going to, instead of advancing a quest, it's going to look at the status of a quest and toggle the visibility and activity of its children nodes based on the status of the quest. As we build this next quest-related node, the QuestActivatedSwitch, let's go ahead and look at our file system and remind ourselves where we left off. So let's see, down here under quests, we've got our utility nodes. This is where our quest advanced trigger is, right, that we built. Now we're going to have a node that's very similar to the quest advanced trigger, but it's going to do quite a bit different code under the hood, okay? So let's create a new node down here, new scene, I should say, and we'll call this one QuestActivatedSwitch, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and create or attach a script to this as well. And this should be a tool script. We want an icon, which is this little question mark. Okay, and then the class name is going to be QuestActivatedSwitch, just like that. And it's not going to extend Node2D because just like our quest advanced trigger, this is going to extend the quest node. All right. Now, before we do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to reload the project because I want that icon to work. Okay, there we go. Icon works. I'm happy. So QuestActivatedSwitch. Now, like I said, this, and as is obvious, right, this extends from QuestNode, so it's got some similar things in here. But the QuestActivatedSwitch is actually quite a bit more complicated than our quest advancing trigger because we have to deal with more conditions and we have to do a little bit more work with it, right? I'm also going to change how we update the settings summary in this script. So we're going to override the functionality of that settings summary code that we wrote here in the quest node. If, just as a reminder, if we look down here, update summary, okay, we've got this nice little function. We're going to do something different here. Where I want to begin with this is I want to make this very explicit because if we're not careful, this switch could become very cumbersome to use. And in fact, when I was building this, one thing that cost me extra time was debugging and trying to get this thing working. I had an epiphany that I was trying to be a little bit too simple and that was causing me headaches. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to make a special enum. An enumerable is, this is just like a type of variable that says you can select from a set of given options. So we're going to call this enumerable the CheckType, meaning what type of condition are we checking on the quest to determine if this is active or not. So there's going to be a few. There's going to be one that we call has quest. There's going to be another one that's going to be called quest step complete. If a step is complete, so we would pass in a quest and see if it's complete. The next type of check we would do is if we're on the current quest step, which is different than checking if we have completed a step, right? Because this is going to check if we've completed the previous steps. And then we're also going to have one that allows us to just check if the quest has been completed. So those are our types. 4 different types. That means that this node is going to function in 4 different ways depending on which one we pick. And that's why it's a little bit more complicated. But it's not terribly complicated, so just bear with me. Let's go ahead and set up the signals and other variables that we're going to need to make this node work. So we'll have a signal that we're going to call isActivatedChanged. And obviously this is going to emit when the state of this node changes. So if it's tied to a quest and then we check it off and it becomes complete, it will emit this isActivatedChanged signal. And this is going to pass a value of a bool in, right? Whether it's active or not. We're also going to export a few extra variables here on top of what our QuestNode exports. So export variable. We need the check type. So like we've defined up this enum up here of the check types, we need to export a variable so that we have the way to select that. So if we say check type is of type check type, like that, then we'll be able to see those in the dropdown. And let's go ahead, and if I select this, you can see the check type right here. There we go. So now we can select what kind of check we're doing. Pretty cool. And I want to go ahead and actually just maybe default this to CheckType.hasQuest. And that's how you use an enumerable. Kind of weird, maybe, but that's how it works, right? The next export variable is going to be a Boolean that we'll call remove when activated. And this is a Boolean, and by default, it will be false. So what's going to happen is the default behavior of this script is that it's going to contain some children, right? And in fact, let's go ahead and start setting one of these up over here in O2. I want to come up to these little switches. And how this is going to work, I'm going to add one of these to the scene. So this is the QuestActivatedSwitch. Okay, so if I were to take this pressure plate 2 and drag it in here, it's now a child of this QuestActivatedSwitch, right? And so you can see CheckType has quest. So the goal is if I have the quest, then maybe this button appears, right? Alternatively, you could check this remove when activated, and so then it would show the button and remove it when we have the quest. Okay, so this is essentially toggling the behavior. So the default behavior is to show the children nodes when the quest conditions are met. The alternative behavior is to remove them when those conditions are met. Okay, I hope that's making sense so far. It'll make more sense when we implement it if this is a little confusing now. And then lastly, we're going to export a variable. Because the way this node works is, let's give an example. Let's say you talk with the NPC and you get a quest, and then maybe that NPC is going to vanish from the scene, right, after you've talked to him. But you don't want that to happen as you're talking to him or right after, because that would be weird. You'd want to be able to like leave the scene, and then when you come back the next time, maybe he's gone. And that'll be the default behavior actually for how this node functions, because that's more common or standard way to want to implement this. But sometimes we want to react on the spot, right? So like in the example we're setting up here with these switches, maybe we just want the switch to appear as you're on the level. And in that case, we'll just provide an export variable where you can do that. And so we'll call this react to global signal. It's maybe not the best name because that might not make sense, but it made sense to me. I don't know. Okay. And then we need one more variable that's not an export variable, just is activated, right? Just to track the state of it. Activated, a Boolean, which will equal false by default. So the first thing I'd like to address is, as mentioned, we're going to have a different display in our settings summary. So let's override that function. And if we look at our QuestNode, the function that we use to set that, right, is this update summary. I'm going to go ahead and just copy the whole function and come over to this guy here. I'm going to put this down. It'll be at the bottom eventually. So we've got our update summary function. We can keep this first line, but the rest is going to change depending on the type of check that we're doing, right? The check type. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these lines. So let's do this. So if check type equals CheckType.hasQuest. So if it's this type, then we're going to add a line to our summary, setting summary dot, or not dot, but plus equals. And then here we'll just give a message checking if player has quest. Okay. And then next we'll check if, let's see, check type is equal to CheckType dot quest step complete. That's the next one in the list. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do a different message here, setting summary plus equals. And then here we're going to say checking if player has completed a step, and then whatever the number is, right? So we'll do that. And then we'll just say plus get step. And I guess we don't have the number there, but the step name is what we'll display. And we'll do another if check type equals CheckType dot on current quest step. So what we're going to add to this string is check if on step, and then we can add that get step name again. Got a little issue, put an underline instead of the plus. And then we'll do another elif checkType equals checkType.questComplete. And then here the settings summary will say checking if quest is complete. Okay, so there we go. So we're going to give a different message out there, right? So in order to test this update summary, let's go ahead and go over here to scene 2. If I select this quest activated script here, we don't see anything in the settings summary, but if I select a quest, let's do quick load, and I'll select long quest. There we go. Now I see update quest, quest long quest, checking if player has quest. Now if I change this though, it's not going to update quest step complete. I want it to update when I change the check type. So let's see if we can fix that. Let's go back to the script. And I think what we need to just do is on our check type up here, we'll just put a setter, I guess, set equals set check type, and spell that right and copy, and let's go make that function. Okay, so this is obviously going to have a value, which is going to be a check type, right? So we'll set the check type appropriately. So check type equals v, and then down here we can just call that update summary. Okay, now hopefully this works. So looking at our scene here, if I change this to quest complete, there we go. Checking if quest is complete, checking if player has completed step, and there's no step there. But if I change this, step 1, step 2, and so on, right? This toggle here is really not needed, the quest complete, just the step, because we have a condition for has quest and is quest complete. Okay, so we'll just handle that there. And there we go. That's how we get this kind of set up and ready to use. And then we're ready to start building the rest of the functionality on this guy. Okay, so let's add our ready function, because that's a good place to start. And what does it need to do? Let's go ahead and add our engine editor check in here so that we don't run this in the editor. There we go. So now we're set up to skip the rest of the script, or the ready function. So what we need to do is two things. We need to connect to the global signal, but only if the user has checked that React global signal. So we'll just say if React to global signal equals true, then we can connect to that, which is a signal in our quest manager. So quest manager dot quest updated, dot connect. And then obviously we need a function to handle this. So we will call that on quest updated. Okay. Let me copy this little guy and let's make this function. Now the onQuest updated function, we're going to be expecting to receive the quest, but not the quest as in the resource, right? Not this quest. It's just going to be a dictionary. Okay. And what we'll do is check. We'll just update the status of this node. And so we're going to build a function that we're going to call check is activated. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create this function right now. And we'll build that in just a second. But actually, in the onReady function, we want to call this check is activated here as well, right? Because as soon as this node loads, that's what it's going to do. It's just going to check if it's active. And then if we've told it to react to global signal, it'll connect to the quest change or the quest updated signal from the quest manager and run the check is activated again whenever a variable from the quest changes. Okay. And so what we really need to do is get into this check is activated function. And this is where most of the stuff is going to happen in here. So here's what we're going to have to do with this. This is going to be fairly complicated. The first thing that we'll do is we'll get the saved quest. Pretty simple. And so let's go ahead and do that, right? So our quest will be of type dictionary again, because we don't want the we don't want the resource for this one because we want to see the saved data, which is in this dictionary of the current quests. So this is equal to quest manager dot find quest. And of course, this wants us to pass in a quest, which we do have the linked quest. So we've got that quest resource there. Okay. And if you recall, let's look at this find quest method on the quest manager. If we don't find the quest, then it returns this dictionary where the title of the quest is not found. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy that string. Since we're matching a string, it's got to be exact. So let's say if underscore q dot title, title does not equal not found. Right? Because if it does equal not found, then that means we didn't have the quest. And in fact, we can go ahead and handle that. So if it's not found, we'll do the else. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to deactivate it. And let's create this function now too. So we'll use a function for activating or deactivating the quest. We'll call it set is activated. And we'll provide a value of false here. Okay. So the set is activated function, let's make this right down here and let me give this a pass so that that function is okay. Okay, so our set is activated function is going to take in this value that we give it, which is going to be a Boolean, true or false. And the first thing it will do is it will set the is activated value of our script. So it is activated will equal v. We also have that signal is activated changed. Is activated changed. There we go. Dot emit will emit the value. And then we're going to do the following code. We had to either set it to an active state or set it to a deactive state, right? So we'll do it first. We'll do a check. We'll say if is activated equals true. Then what we want to do, obviously the default would be to just show the children, right? But actually we've also got this export variable up here that we have remove when activated. So we have to do another check, don't we? Because we might want to remove them. So we'll say if remove when activated equals true. And then in this case, we actually want to hide the children, else we'll show them, right? And likewise, if activated is false, so else to this bigger condition here, right? If is activated equals false, then what do we do here? We're going to do another check because it's basically going to be the same thing. We're going to have a very similar looking condition, except instead of hiding and showing, it's going to be reversed. So this is kind of funny because it's just like reverse logic twice. It's kind of confusing maybe. And since we're going to hide and show in multiple times, we should just create a function for each of those. And I'm going to just paste the code in here and we'll talk about it. Okay, so first function, show children. Now what this function does is it just loops over all the children. It sets visible to true and it sets the process mode to inherit. Okay, this process mode is important because you can hide a children and have scripts running, but we want to treat these as if they're not even here. Okay, and I don't know why those are indented double. That's kind of funny. And then the hide children is similar, except one difference, and that's that we're doing set deferred, but we're setting the same values. So if we're hiding them, then we'll set the visible to false, and we're going to do it set deferred. We'll set the process mode to process mode disabled, and we'll set that deferred. And we're setting these deferred because if we're reacting to a signal and we try and set them in the standard fashion, then we're going to get an error. And what set deferred does is just set it like on the next idle frame. Okay, so now we can just come in here. I already copied my show children function, so I'm just going to come in here and paste that. And then we'll do the same for hide children. Just put it in there where it's appropriate. And voila. Okay, so now we have a way to activate and update the status. And so how this looks, obviously, is, we've got our pressure plate. If this quest decides it needs to hide it, it'll hide it, and then it can show it as well. And not only will it hide it, but it will deactivate any scripts. So that's going to be really useful to just essentially remove and add things to the scene. So let's go back to our script here. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so finally back here to this check is activated. Obviously, we just did all that work just for the condition where we want to deactivate things. So there we go. And in fact, we could kind of test this. In some cases it might work, but I think it's more worth it to just continue building this out. Let's start with our first check type, because if you recall, we've got the 4 types. Let's look at them here. Has quest, quest step complete, on current step, on current quest step, or quest complete. So we're going to check a different condition for each of those. So the first one is if check type is has quest. And this one's actually really easy because if we've made it this far, then we already know we have the quest, right? So we already passed the test. We're done. We'll set is activated to true and call it good, right? Because we have the quest. Now, the next step that we want to check is if the quest is complete. We're doing this in a very specific order that makes the code a little bit more efficient or easy to think about. So if we have the quest, then maybe we just check if it's complete first, right? Let's say we have the quest, but we're not checking to just if we have it. Now let's check if it's complete. I guess I should say it that way. Yeah, so this is quite simple as well, because what we've got is we've got a quest, and if we're checking if the quest is complete, we can actually also compare if it's true or false, right? So if the quest complete is what we're checking and it matches the status of our save, then that's good. And if it's false and it matches, then that's also good, I guess. Okay, so we can set that one that way. The next type of check that we want to do is to check if a quest step is complete. And this one gets a little bit more hairy, I guess. So let's do this. Let's first start with if quest step is greater than 0. Because if the quest step that we've selected in our UI is 0, then we don't have a step to check against. Okay, so if quest step is greater than 0, then what we can do is we can check to see if we have that. So we'll another check if q dot completed steps, and then we can say has, and then here we're going to get step, right? So if this equals true, then that means that we've completed the step. So we can just call set is activated and call true. If not, if it's false, then obviously we can just do set is activated to false. Now, if the quest step is not greater than 0, then let's put a condition in here, and we can say set is activated to false. So I hope this is making sense so far, but obviously here we're just checking if that quest step is part of in our grouping of steps, right? And I want to check this get step function because we've got something that's just going to return a string, right? I'm just going to convert this to lowercase just because we had that to lowercase bug previously, and I just don't want that to happen. Try and avoid that at all costs. Okay, so there we go. Except now I don't know where I'm at. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now our get step will return a lowercase version of that. That's good. And let's go ahead and test a couple of these before we build the next one. So let's go to 2D. We've only got one of these activated things here, and it's on this second button. They're just kind of out of order. Let's go ahead and it actually, this is kind of going to be annoying to me, so I'm just going to fix this right now. Remember how on our quest trigger we added this sprite 2D? I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it over here. Okay. And I'm going to drag it across on the other side. And then just change the sprite. And real quick, before we test, let's get this Q-free code and bring it over here as well. Okay, there we go. Now I'm ready. Now I feel good. I feel like I can test this. Let's come over here. So, oh, interesting. So when I added this quest activated, you see I added it and then I drug the button inside of it. And so the positions are all off. So that's not working very well. What I'd like to do just to fix that is I'm going to take this pressure plate. I'm going to go to the transform, I'm going to reset it. And then I can take this. Whoop. There we go. And we've got the same issue here. This other checkbox, this is part of our dialogue system for our little guy over here. Let's see, where's that at? Where's our NPC 2? Yeah, we've got this guy. Let me just drag this over by him. Okay. Obviously, his little quest thing is right there. So we can see he's got some quest checking stuff to do. Okay, just a little bit of cleanup. So when we look at this check type, let's just say first has quest. So if by default we're checking to see if it has the quest, then this button should appear when we have the quest, which is long quest. And the previous button will give us long quest. So let's run this. I think we might break. No, maybe not. Okay. So that seems like it's working because the button's gone. And then if I press this, well, the button didn't show, but let's leave the screen and come back. There we go. Now that happened because we don't have, remember we've got this react to global signal. Now if I turn that on, let's run and test this again. Now the button should appear as soon as we hit the first button. There we go. Now likewise, we could, let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm just going to bring this other pressure plate maybe inside of here and delete this one. And I'm just going to set this transform to 0. Okay, there we go. I think there might actually be a setting to automatically adjust those transforms differently, but so this pressure plate is going to set quest step 2. What we could do, our first thing is checking if we have the quest. Then this next one, we can now check if quest step is complete. And let's just put step 1, right? And we've got react to global signal on, so it should just happen right away. Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew it was going to break at some point because I recognize that we've got a little issue in here. So let's fix that bug. Oops, I lost the bug. Let's try it again. Let's get that bug. Okay, there we go. Invalid access to property or key title on base object of type nil. So right here, I guess we've got something that doesn't have a linked quest yet. And so we can't update the summary. Let's just do this. Let's say if linked quest equals null, then we can give it a different setting summary. We'll say setting summary equals select a quest. And then we can just return. And I think this should fix the issue. I hope that's all we need to do. Okay, there we go. It's back. Okay, so no quests. Pressing the first one will give me long quest. And so the first button appears. Now the second one, we were checking for step 1, and we can see I've got step 1 complete, and there's our other button. Okay, so we can kind of see how that's working, right? And likewise, if I wanted to take this button, we could make it visible, and then we could remove it when active. So now if I test this scene, then that third button is going to be there until I hit the second button, right? Because as soon as I get step 1, then that button disappears. Okay, so you can kind of see how this is starting to take shape. We just have a little bit more work to do to complete it. All right, so back to our quest activated script. We've handled 3 of the 4 conditions. We haven't really tested the quest complete one, but we will. But let's add the last elif so that we can test against our last type. So this check type is CheckType.onCurrentQuestStep. Okay. And the reason I've saved this one for last is because it's the one that requires the most amount of work. So the first thing we need to do is get our step, which is a string, and this will equal, we can just use our getStep function that we have in the parent. And then if step equals NA, that means we don't have a step, and we'll just do the set is activated false in this condition. Okay, because that means we don't have a valid step to check. And then we'll do an else here. So this is if we do have a step to check, then what are we going to do? The next thing that we can do is we can just check if the step that we have is in our completed steps array. Because if it is, then we know that we're not on this step. We've already completed it. So that's an easy check. Let's do that. We'll say if q dot completed steps dot has, and then I'm going to say step, right? So if we have this step, then we know that it's, like I was saying before, then we know that it's completed. So we're not on the step currently. Okay. So then what we'll do is we'll set is activated to false. Else, now we need to do a little bit more because we still don't know if we're on the current step. Now we need to get the previous step. So we'll say variable prev step, which is going to be a string, equals, and here we need, let's make a function to do this. We'll say get previous step. Okay. Because I don't want to complicate the code here. We might need that somewhere else. So let's come down somewhere and just make this new function, get previous step. And this is going to return a string, right? And here's what this is going to look like. We're going to check if our quest step is less than our step count or equal to, right? Because we don't want to go outside that range, and that's a safety check there. We also want to make sure our quest step is greater than 1, because if it's not, then that means we can't really check the previous step, okay? So we'll return a value here if it passes those conditions. And what we're going to return is the linked quest steps at the index of the quest step -2. And you're probably thinking, why -2? And that's because twofold, two reasons. Our quest step is not based on 0, right? So if when we're selecting this in the UI, if we put 1, that's the first step. And then if we put 2, that's the second step. But in our quest step array, the steps array, the first step is index 0. Okay, so if we want to find the quest step, we would have to do that -1. Okay. And then on top of that, we're checking the previous step. So -1 again. Okay. So that's why it's -2. And then but obviously if we don't pass this up here, then we'll just return an NA. So let's go back up to our function here. This check is activated, right? Okay. So we've got our previous step, and let's handle this. You're probably wondering about that -2 and like, well, what if we're on the first step? And actually, here's the secret to that one. We're going to say if the previous step equals NA, then we know that there is no previous step, so we must be on the first step. Okay, so in this case, we're actually going to set is activated to true. And I'm laughing because I'm starting to feel like that guy in The Princess Bride. I can clearly not choose the step in front of me.
Clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
Elif, right? If the previous step is this, otherwise we had to do another check. So this check here, elif, will just say if our completed steps on our quest has the previous step, and let's just do 2 lower, just to be safe. Always making these go lowercase so that I'm not worried about capitalization. Okay, so if this is the case, if we find it in that array, then we know that it's the current step. We're on the current step, right? Because if the previous step is checked, but the current one isn't, which was already checked above, then we're good. And then there's one last else in here, and this is just going to say set is activated false, and boom. Now we're done. We've looped through all of the possibilities, and we've finished this little thing. So here's how we'll do this. We can check this. Here on our first item, we were saying if we have the quest, do this. And then this last one, we're saying if step is completed, and we were checking the previous one. We could also do on current step. The on current step and step completed are very similar, but I built them both because you'll find that there are situations where it's easier or important to check one and not the other. Okay. So on current quest step, that's the one we just built, right? Let's go ahead and check this. So if we're on quest step 2, then we want to show this maybe. Is that right? Am I making sense? Because this pressure plate is going to complete step 1. Okay, I think that's right. Let's test it. So let's go ahead and get our little thing here. Boink. Quests. Okay. We have our quest, and we're currently on step 1 technically. There we go. So step 1 is complete. That means we're on step 2. And so the last button has appeared. And I don't know I don't remember what we had the last button set to do, but when I hit it, everything disappeared. So what is this doing? That's just completing that step. So actually that works because once that step was no longer there, it disappeared, which is kind of nice, right? So you can have something that only appears if you're in a certain sequence of steps. Okay, so let's just check one more thing. Let's go ahead and provide a way to be able to complete a step, and then we'll know if this is working. So let me just add one of these quest step things. And where's it at? Up here. Okay, so let's put something in here. I don't know what we'll add. Let's add a pot. Okay, so we've got a pot. And, oh, that's funny. This little quest icon is behind it. We should probably fix that. I'm going to have to come in here to both of these and fix that real quick. So this sprite, let's give it a ordering z-index of, I don't care. Let's give it a high z-index, 10. So it'll be in front of lots of things. Okay. All right. There we go. So we've got a pot. Let's make this pot only appear when long quest is completed. Which is stupid, but let's do it. We got to load our quest. Okay. So now we'll just check if the quest is complete, and if it is, then we'll show the pot. Okay, so what we need to do too is, I guess, is take one of these test switches, and let's make this one mark the quest as complete. So hopefully this works. So we should see a pot after we run over all the buttons. Uh-oh. Long quest completed. I don't see my little pot. Okay, let's figure that out. Let's figure out why it's not working. Let's try this first. How about react to global signal? I think that was the bug. So not a bug, user error. Oh, there's a bug. Yeah, interesting, because sometimes quest complete is false, right? Okay, let's go ahead and stop this. So I'm not certain if this is a fix, and this is actually not an issue I ran into before. So let's quickly debug this. So what's happening is our quest complete is a Boolean, and this is not supposed to be a Boolean, but if it's set to false, it's just like empty quotes, which if we experience this in our quest manager, if we don't test types directly Boolean to Boolean, then just a quote would evaluate as false. So in other words, if my value equals bump, bump, then that would be the same as my value equals false. Okay. But what we're doing here is we're actually comparing a false to a string, and it won't work when we do it that way, even though you would think it would. So here's the fix. We've got this issue, right, where we've got sometimes a value that might be a string, it might be Boolean. So we just need to make sure that it's always a Boolean. And here's how we'll do it. We'll say variable is complete is a Boolean, and it equals false. And then what we'll do is we're going to check our Q is complete. And in fact, we're not going to use this underscore Q is complete here. We will here. And then down here, we're just going to use this new is complete variable that we've defined. And we're not going to check the value of Q is complete. We're going to check the type. So if it is a Boolean, that means we're checking if this variable type is a Boolean. Then we'll update is complete to match whatever it is. And I can just paste that, I think. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to be false, because the only time that it's not a Boolean is when it's just empty string, in which case it's false. Okay, so that's the fix there. Here's what we're going to do then. We're going to come in here. Let's review each of these. Our first pressure plate is activating or giving us the long quest. Second pressure plate is only going to show when we have the quest. Third pressure plate is going to show when we're on step 2, and it's going to complete the quest for us. And then this pot down here should show when the quest is complete. Let's see if we got it all working this time. Nice. except it's backwards, right? Because we're checking the quest complete if it matches this value, which was off. So we were checking when it's not complete. Let's go ahead and try this again. There we go. And you know what? I don't like how that works. I don't want it to look at this value. So I'm going to change it. So probably most of this work, let's see. I don't actually want this. Here's what we're going to check. So we're checking if the quest is complete, and that's all I want to check for. So is complete is false, right? Let's get rid of this piece. And I think that's all we need. Update it, just to get rid of that comparison. So we'll just set it directly to the value of is complete. So let's look at this. So right now we're going to show this when the quest is complete. I like that. We won't show it before we have the quest, during the quest, only when it's complete. Let's try that. There we go. And now I can run over, well, those made the quest not complete, so that makes sense. Let's try inversing this, so then we'll remove it when the quest is complete. Boink. Cool. Now the fact that when I run back over these buttons that changes the quest status, that's just something you have to be careful of, right? You have to make sure that when you're adding these triggers, you can't override things that you don't want to. But aside from that minor defect, which is something that we just have to be careful to avoid, I think that this quest activated switch is complete. So thank you again, everybody, for following along. Give this video a like if it helped you out. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet and you want to see what's coming next. And next we'll be kind of wrapping up this quest system. We're going to give some notifications and maybe make some things go full circle, like be able to actually complete Nero's quest by finding the flute. So we'll just use these switches, put some examples of how you can use them in the game world. And other than that, I appreciate everybody for following along. And of course, I want to give a shout out to my Patreon subscribers and invite anybody who feels inclined to go ahead and join my Patreon. And as always, we'll see you next time.